Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
These shows are brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation in partnership with the Compassionate Friends. Well, Heidi, we were just down in Parkland, Florida to a day of healing, which was absolutely amazing after the school shootings down there. And we've got a good friend from down there, and we want to talk to him today about his whole organization and all the wonderful things he's done for the Parkland community. Would you like to introduce him?
I would, Mom. And like you said, we were down at Parkland, and we were down there because Bob Resciniti, our guest, brought us there. And he offered a day of hope and healing for those impacted by the Parkland school shootings. We met Bob many, many years ago when we did a Walking Through Grief series with him. And that's now been made into audio and videotapes. And he is such an authentic person. As you know, Mom, he's just got the biggest heart in the world. And he does everything in honor of his son, Bobby, who was killed at 21 years old in a car accident. And he is today the founder of the Bob Resciniti Healing Hearts Foundation. And it is a bereavement center. You and I went there on a tour, and it is absolutely fabulous. I mean, all the details and all the quotes, and it feels like a giant, wonderful living room. And it's a wonderful place to do therapy and get services after a loss. He's been married for 37 years, and I was recently at the Tribute Center at the 9/11 Memorial, and I met his wife and his two children there. His wife, they've said they've been married 37 years, and he's got two kids, Michelle and Nick, and we went on an amazing tour of Ground Zero, and Jim Giaccone gave us the tour, and his brother died in the World Trade Center. So if anyone out there wants to go to the Tribute Center and get a personal tour, I would strongly advise it. But today we are going to be talking about the Parkland school shootings and how to help communities after traumatic loss. So welcome to the show, Bob.
Well, thank you. That was quite an introduction. I'm glad to be here.
Well, Bob, whoever thought you'd be where you are with that center, and how many years ago has it been since Bobby died?
Bobby died in 2006. It's been 12 years since we lost him.
In an automobile accident, yep. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, and who would have thought that you'd have this tragedy at Parkland, Florida, and be opening your center to help so many people? It's pretty amazing.
It is amazing, and we opened the doors to Bobby's place in Coral Springs, about 2 miles from Stoneman Douglas.
Wow.
Never anticipating or never expecting anything to this magnitude happening in our backyard.
Right.
You know what? We were there for them when they needed us, and we opened our hearts and we opened our arms and our doors to Bobby's place to help.
Yeah,
a lot of others did too. So I mean, not just us.
Well, I know, but you had a wonderful setting, and one of the things that we were so impressed with is how you helped the faculty, because surprisingly enough, the first responders, it seemed, had a system set up for them, but the faculty didn't have that same system. And I think it took everybody by surprise, because you're so involved, I'm sure, in the crisis situation, that suddenly, I think it was the assistant principal stopped and said, "Hey, we're not getting any support. The teachers aren't."
Well, that's how it happened. It just, a friend of ours, Jim, is a sheriff. He's been a sheriff for 35 years in Broward County. I've known him for 30 years.
Wow.
We're very good friends with the assistant principal at Stoneman Douglas. So after it happened, he got her in touch with us. And she's awesome. And here's what she said: all the resources and all the help are going to the students, and it should. It was tragic. And then the first responders were getting, like you said, Gloria, getting a lot of attention and help. And nothing was going to the teachers. They were on their own. So I got with her and I said, what can we do to help? And I showed her Bobby's place, and that's how it kind of evolved into group meetings with the teachers and the faculty of Building 1200.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I love it, because I feel like, the teachers need to be there for the kids. And if no one is there for the teachers, it's going to be hard for them to be there fully for the children.
That's correct.
So I love that you're addressing the teachers' needs also, because the teachers definitely had a lot of trauma, and there was a lot of you know, feelings of why couldn't we have saved more kids? And, you know, there's just a lot of things going on. I mean, when your kids are with their teachers 8 hours a day, they almost become surrogate parents in some way.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's good that we were there for them, and it's been ongoing since the February.
I was going to say, you continue to be there for them. That's the cool thing about Bobby's Place. You're going to be there in 3 years for those people. I mean, these things aren't short-term workouts, as you know. I mean, it's a long process to go through this kind of trauma. What has been your thought about what do you find is most helpful to parents early on and spouses? I know you cover everything. What do you find is most helpful with Bobby's Place? When do people come?
Well, I think people come and they continue to come because they find out that how they feel, whether it be the guilt or the anger or whatever the feelings they have as a newly bereaved parent, they're not alone in how they feel. They get to talk to other bereaved parents, being facilitated by a licensed therapist, but they get to speak to other parents that have been walking in their shoes maybe longer and said, hey, I know how you feel. I've been there. I've done that. So they're not alone in how they feel. So I think that's a big plus for our counseling center, our grief center. Yeah.
Now, do you have a lot of volunteers?
We're all volunteer driven. The only payroll we have is the therapists. Everybody else, include all the board members and everybody, we must have 150, 200 volunteers.
Wow.
To help us. Yeah. It's been great. It's been a blessing.
Yeah, well, what I was thinking about, I knew you had a lot of volunteers, and I want to tell people, for me, for Heidi, for you, it's really healing to volunteer, isn't it? To do something, to figure out how to help.
It's very healing. Every time we help someone and we volunteer, and the volunteers say the same thing. They show up to one of our events, they work hard, and they're so satisfied afterwards because they made a difference in those people's lives. Like on May 20th, when you guys were there and so many other awesome people were there, the volunteers were very satisfied. It was very fulfilling for them. Yeah.
Well, and I was going to ask you about May 20th. So Bob, how did you decide to do a day of hope and healing? Did you see that the community needed it, or what? How did that start?
Well, right after it happened, I started thinking, this is catastrophic and terrible, and it's in our backyard. And I said, well, I didn't know that all these resources would come from all over the United States. I didn't even think of that. I just thought of what can Healing Hearts do to help this situation. And that's when I got a hold of Mitch Carmody. And I reached out to Mitch and I said, Mitch, I want to do something. What do you think? And he put the thinking cap on and brainstormed. And then we got Ann Castaldo involved. Then we got you involved, Heidi, and we got your input and a lot of other people. And we put this day together based on just a bunch of awesome people volunteering like yourself to come in and help. So. And the
Marriott giving you some space, right?
The Marriott stepped up big. I met with Mark Cherry, and we've hosted our annual dinner there. This will be our 12th year. So I have a relationship with the hotel, and I told him what we want to do. He said, Bob, the hotel's yours.
Wow.
No charge.
Wow. And it was quite a day. I mean, how many different things were there? It was incredible.
Oh my God. It was probably 40 people that came from all over the United States, like you did, Heidi, and gave up their time and talent to help that day. And then there was all the other breakout rooms. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. And of course, it rained really bad that day, didn't it? So, I mean, that may have kept some people away, but it was overall a very successful day.
Yeah. What did you feel like people needed after? I mean, what kind of things helped? I mean, there was so many different things there. And I know that you, in hindsight, felt like, okay, there were certain things that people really needed and that they really found helpful that day.
Well, looking back and getting the feedback, I think the biggest highlight for people that I heard was, one of the biggest highlights was the panel. When we had the panel, the guest panel, 7 different people up there, experts from different fields. Debbie Rambis, I believe, was on there, and Allie Franklin was on there, and
They're the president of the board and the executive director of the Compassionate Friends were there. Yeah, I just wanted to say who they were for people who are watching. Go ahead.
yeah, and they were great. And Debbie Rampus, by the way, was a huge resource for us. She was very helpful in giving us input and ideas. And Ann Castaldo was also, I mean, she was a big help to us.
Yeah.
But, the panel was really well received by a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Breakouts, people love Josh Richardson, the drummer.
The drummer. Now, I think that's one thing that Heidi's getting at, because Heidi and I were wandering around the halls, and it seems that people wanted to do the drumming. I know kids did drumming. Josh has people build drums. He's fabulous. But also people were standing in line for Reiki, anything physical. So, the chair yoga. I think that it looks like what people really need initially is to get back into their bodies.
That's true. Well, that room with the Reiki and the massage, the therapy and the yoga, that was the most popular. That thing was filled all day long.
It was. I saw a line, in fact, trying to get in there.
Yeah, it was huge.
It was amazing. And I loved the therapy dogs walking around.
Boy,
I thought those were incredible. People were hugging them and petting them, and it just changed the energy.
It did. It was an awesome day, and if I had to change one thing, I'm not sure if I could sit here and say, let's change this. It was,
and then all the art therapy that was done, and what really touched me is the fact that there were police officers there that had been involved with the shootings, and they were there to do their own healing. One of the things that was the most impactful is that there was a police officer there that approached a family who whose child had died in the Parkland shooting. And he said to the family, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And they were hesitant. And they went up to, they met with them, and he basically said, "I carried your child out of the shooting. I was with your child, and I treated your child like my own. Your child wasn't alone when they died." And I thought that was so powerful and so important for the family to hear that.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess mentally and physically being touched is what we need early on. Having a word from someone who's been there, or having some physical touch, or, breathing, drinking water, all those things that sound pretty mundane are the important things. Well, Bob, I wanted you to tell people a little bit about your center. We really haven't touched on how many people have you helped, and what do you do there? Tell us that.
Well, we have a grief center. It's in Coral Springs, Florida, and it's a building that's about 2,000 square foot, and we host group meetings for parents that lost children. We host meetings for siblings, and now about 2 years ago, we opened it up to any type of loss. So we offer group meetings, and we have private counseling sessions, and we fund all of it. We don't charge for anything at this time. We're proud to say that we can afford to do that, and so all our services are free to the community. And we also do a portrait ministry where we provide hand-drawn portraits by Mitch Carmody to bereaved parents, not only locally but nationally, to anywhere in the United States. So we'll mail them off or bring them in and present to them live.
Great.
Our grief centers, it's awesome. It really is.
Are you still doing those wonderful necklaces with pictures?
We do that too.
I've got one of Scott. They're fabulous.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's
really
awesome.
Fantastic what you and your wife have put together there, and so wonderful. So you're connected with the Compassionate Friends. You know everybody.
Yeah, I know them all, and I got to say one more thing too. A person that we didn't mention here, but she was so helpful early on in developing this whole program for the May 20th event, and she's been great. And that's Sally Lynch from Tuesday's Children.
Oh yeah.
Sally was really helpful in keeping us grounded and staying focused, and say, hey, stay the course. This is what you should do. And she was open and honest with us. It was great. So between her and I, we helped put together a good event.
Yeah. Well, Sally with Tuesday's Children has been around. Heidi, she worked with you, right, for a lot of years with the 9/11.
Yeah, she worked with me for 10 years. Her focus is traumatic loss, and she knows really what communities need. because she's right here in Midtown Manhattan, and this is what she does day in and day out. In fact, I just saw her 2 nights ago. But she is a good person, and she will tell you what's going to work and what's not, and has done a lot of research and a lot of publishing about it. So I'm glad that she was so helpful and that you guys connected, because that was a great marriage, basically.
It is. And that was because of you, Heidi. You introduced us.
I love Sally. Yes. Well, my mom and I, this is our world. As you know, our world is very small, and we're all in it together to basically, acknowledge and validate everybody's loss. And I think that is really important also after something like this, because I find in communities that there sometimes tends to be a hierarchy of whose loss was worse after this kind of event. And the reality is everybody needs to be acknowledged and validated, because everybody in the community has been impacted, maybe not directly, but indirectly, by something of this magnitude.
That's true. Very good point.
And with the advent of the internet being what it is today, we can be in community. I mean, we can be in community with Tuesday's Children. We can be in community with the over 600 chapters of the Compassionate Friends. There are all sorts of other communities for spouse loss support, like Soaring Spirits Foundation, Michelle Neff Hernandez. There's so many organizations that we can all come together now. It doesn't need to be a competition. It needs to be letting people know the resources that are out there. And you are such a great resource. And you have a walk every year that is absolutely amazing. And you did that before the Parkland School thing that supports your organization, right? Or part of the support.
Yep, it's usually in April or May every year, and this year we had over 1,000 people, and it's a good turnout. I mean, we love the walk. To me, is probably the most fulfilling thing we do all year round. It's beautiful.
So I think that what I'm thinking is that people who live in your area who want to come there will have you tell us your website and how they can find you. But also, if there are people out there that want to start an organization like yours who've had a loss, I bet you'd be willing to help them or fill them in.
Absolutely. You said something a little bit ago, and I think we need to, and Debbie Rambis has made this clear, we need to get away from the competition and work more on cooperation and collaborate, because the world is small and there's plenty to go around for everyone. We need to help one another and help. In turn, it will help the community, like what you guys do. You're a charity that are helping bring other charities into the limelight. So, I mean, you're giving us a platform, and I think it's fantastic what you do.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And, you guys are amazing. And we really have worked hard to try to give a voice to grief and recovery, because there's so many people out there that just don't realize that they're going to be okay, that they're going to get through it, and I know we're here to tell them, you're not only going to get through it, but you're going to be happy again, which is hard to believe.
It is. At times, early on, it's very hard to believe.
Yeah. You got any thoughts on that, Heidi?
I just love everything that Bob is doing. And, he's the kind of person that has never met a stranger. And if you guys want to get involved with his organization, please do go and volunteer. How could they get a hold of you if they wanted to volunteer, Bob?
Well, they can go to our website, and it's angelbobby.org, ANGELBOBBY.org, or they can call me at 561-603-3819.
Give that number again.
561-603-3819.
All right, Bob. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I love you. Tell your wife hi.
All right.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for all you're doing. I'm glad that Bobby is your guiding light, and I'm so glad you're there for the Parkland community. We adore you. You know that.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being on, Bob.
We want to thank everybody for watching this show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own. And God bless.